Electrocast.
When we're talking about growing a business, for instance, I always, one thing I try to teach my team, and again, keep reminding myself, is people, they cancel memberships, but they don't cancel relationships. So if we build a good relationship, they're not our attrition and our cancellation. The business part of it takes care of itself.
Welcome to Think Business with Tyler, sharing our methods and strategies for success. Join in on our conversations with business owners as we highlight their triumphs and detail how they overcame the challenges they faced while continuing to grow and scale their business. It's time to think life, think success, and think business with your host, Tyler Martin.
Today, we're diving into an inspiring story with Mike Littrel, President and CEO of X3 Sports. Mike reveals how his passion for fitness transformed into a thriving business and how he's revolutionizing workouts by making them fun and engaging. We'll explore his unique employee training techniques and the art of building a lasting team culture. Plus, he'll share valuable insights on managing growth and overcoming new business challenges. Let's jump right in. Hey, Mike, welcome to the Think Business with Tyler podcast show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks, Tyler, for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. I'd love to learn a little bit about you. I'd love to first start out with what do you do professionally?
Well, I am the president and CEO of X3 Sports. We actually are a health and fitness facility focused on group training classes, and we specialize through the martial arts and mixed martial arts components. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, and then we do some strength and conditioning classes and some hit style, speed and agility classes, which are all geared towards, I would say, what I would call the average person, the person who is, on a fitness journey that wants to be healthy and strong. A lot of people would look at us and say, oh, it's for athletes and fighters, which it is for that. But I think, and within all of us, there's an athlete, a fighter, there's a warrior within all of us. And so what we want to do is make sure that our facilities, our classes, and sort of the experience you get helps pull that out of you and does it in a safe, warm, inviting, beginner-friendly situation where you feel comfortable coming into that.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
And does it in a safe, warm, inviting, beginner-friendly situation where you feel comfortable coming into that.
Yeah, very cool. Sounds interesting. And as you explained it, I think I have about 10 questions already coming off my head. But before we go there, I want to learn something about you personally. Can you share anything you want to share about yourself personally?
Oh, wow. Well, like I said, I've been a lifelong athlete, but I come from a big family. I have 6 brothers and sisters. Let's see, I have a French bulldog named Tater Tot, and he's my spoiled little guy, and a 16-year-old Cocker Spaniel named Jackson, who I call Roomba because all he does is walks around the kitchen looking for food all day long. And I'm like, you're like a Roomba. So
that's cute. 16, that's a good lifespan. I've got a 14-year-old that hopefully makes it for a few more years.
We had a little surgery on him to have a thing removed off of him. And this was about 6 to 8 months ago. And I swear he's like reverse aging. I think he's like turning into Benjamin Button. Like he's now more agile than ever. And I'm like, you're getting like younger.
It's so funny when you mention Roomba. My 14-year-old, he's a 14-year-old big dog. He gets up slow. He's, can't hear. His vision isn't great. But the minute you pull out food, this dog reverts to like a puppy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly like him. He can't hear, but I swear he knows when I've opened up the pantry or, God forbid, you open a peanut butter jar.
So, hey, my first question related to X3, you said something that was very interesting. You implied that you really try to focus on culture of the gym. And the first thing that hits me is, how do you do that? Because, we've all gone into gyms where sometimes they just don't feel comfortable. And
yeah,
and you're kind of dealing with this kind of warrior mentality, but you're also dealing with regular Joes and regular Janes, it sounds like. How do you mix that so it is a comfortable environment?
Yeah, so I think so kind of twofold. Number one, the simplest answer is you have to create a welcoming environment, and you target knowing that everybody's walking in. The assumption is that they're intimidated. And if somebody's walking into your house and they're scared and intimidated, how do you put them at ease? And I mean, it starts with simple stuff like this. Everybody get greeted with a hello when they walk in the door, like, "Hey, how are you?" Especially if we usually know who our first time guests are coming in. And so we want to know everybody by first name. We have to create that environment where this is not just a gym. You don't have a membership here. What we actually do is try to build the relationship. And when I'm training my team and I'm working with my staff, if I'm trying to impart on them what I think success has been for us is creating connection and relationships with everyone who walks in the door. And it's easier to do that when they keep walking in your door, obviously, as opposed to a first time one. But it starts with the first experience. And, when we're talking about growing a business, for instance, I always, one thing I try to teach my team, and again, keep reminding myself is people, they cancel memberships, but they don't cancel relationships. So if we build a good relationship, they're not our attrition and our cancellation. The business part of it takes care of itself, and so you get into things like, well, how do we fix attrition? Or how do we fix this? It's like, well, are you doing the things right from the beginning before you start looking for the hack or for the one-off thing that isn't there? So that's sort of a kind of a one way to look at that. But also too, realizing, like, going into that part where I said, people are intimidated. We already know fitness is hard. It can be hard, I should say. People can be overwhelmed and intimidated. And so we go under that same assumption. Like, when you're walking in the door, it was a lot for you to get there. Like, there were probably 50 decisions that you had to make, of which if any one of them had gone a different way, you would have found a reason not to show up, not to take that first step. And they're all valid in our mind. But you have to keep reminding yourself that, like, what am I really after? What am I going to gain out of this besides, I'm going to be sweaty, sore, and tired? If people think that that's what a workout is, well, come on over to my house. I got a whole list of things that'll make you sweaty, sore, and tired, but I don't think it's a workout. It's a lot of lawn work and a lot of moving shit and stuff. Excuse me. So a lot of this comes back from my days. I grew up playing a lot of sports, but wrestling was a sport that I really got involved in when I was about 11. And anybody who's ever been involved with like wrestling, combat sports, martial arts, you realize that those sports by nature aren't fun. You don't just go out and play wrestling. I mean, you wrestle around with your friends, and things like that as a kid and do things. But when you start talking about competitive wrestling, unlike basketball or football or baseball, like, it's competitive. It can be competitive, but it's also a fun thing to do. Well, wrestling wasn't like that. Wrestling was very much a grueling, type of, like, you're just putting your body through stress all the time. And it was, how much can I continuously endure to get better? And it really becomes me versus me, not me versus my opponent. And so, when I learned that, when I kind of moved into, fast forward into my career, I realized the reason, when I stopped wrestling, the reason I was going to the gym was because I was always preparing for a sport or a competition. And the reason I stayed in wrestling, which was really not as fun as playing football and baseball, which I also did, it was because my best friends were there, so my community was there. And it was less about I want to wrestle, and it was more of I want to be around my friends, And so luckily that was one of the draws that kept me going. And then I had, a lot of success because of that, throughout. And honestly, I truly attribute a lot of my success in life having come through that and been in that type of a sport where I had to, when I started, I was terrible, and like so many people, it's exhausting. They're like, why am I doing this? This is not fun. I'm not winning. I get beat all the time. It's hard work. Now you start talking about, if you have to make weight classes, so you're, dieting and cutting weight and doing all kinds of crazy things. So I used that same thought process and I said, man, so many people have the same relationship with the gym. Like, this is what, we all know we should be in shape or get in shape or feel better or take care of our body. But what does that really mean? And I think most people's easy go-to answer is, well, I got to go to the gym. Well, if the gym is not something that you look forward to going to, how likely are you going to stay committed to it and consistent with it? We've all fallen off our track. We all fall off the path because, let's face it, showing up, getting on the treadmill or on elliptical is usually not the most, wow, I can't wait to get there today. It's going to be fun, versus if you're like, man, I've been having a lot of fun. I'm learning boxing and, it's safe. It's supportive. You're not getting beat up and punched, but you're learning how to work a heavy bag. You're learning focus mitts. And by the time you're, 45 minutes to an hour goes by, you're drenched in sweat and you actually feel like you've gained some knowledge. And our coaches are always really good at understanding where you're at. And the good thing about these sports that we do, most people, I always say you're not a natural boxer. You might be a natural athlete, but boxing is a very kind of a weird style of sport because a lot of things are done from an opposite standpoint. Like you stand differently. Your power hand is not the one you use regularly. So you have to learn to use other parts of your body. So the good thing is when most people come in, we know nobody knows what they're doing. So we can start from that mindset. And we always drive from that area and say, look, I get it. You made it in the door. Let's find a way to make this fun so you're drawn to it, not something you feel like you're being pushed to do. And, if you can create that mindset around, what being healthy is like and what the gym is like or what exercise is like for you, then I think it all changes for you because now it's not something you have to do. It's something that you get to do. And then the benefits just start to compound, oh, I'm leaner. Oh, I'm stronger. Oh, I feel better. I have more mental acuity. Oh, I learned some self-defense too. I mean, we live in a crazy world. Sometimes, what would happen if there was an altercation? Would I even know what to do? Not that we promote that and tell people, hey, now that you're taking a couple boxing classes, you're ready to go out and tackle the world. Let's be realistic. But so I hope that answers the question. It's definitely a deeper approach, and it's not like a one little check the box thing. It's you have to be committed to wanting to help people and knowing that who you're helping, where they come from, and meeting them where they're at.
That's great. That's great. I want to backpedal a little bit. How did you even get onto this journey of X3 Sports? Like, was this your vision to someday have your own gym? And I mean, now I think you're coming up, if you haven't already, up to 6 locations, which is a pretty big deal. Did you always envision having multiple locations? I mean, tell me kind of how this all started.
Yeah. So, kind of taking you back to the early beginnings. So I graduated college in 2001. And, I actually had a degree in business and I was majored in real estate. And I was like, I want to be in commercial real estate. I want to make a lot of money. I grew up from a pretty poor family. So it was like, I wanted to kind of change that part of my life. So fitness for me, going to the gym for me was really like my mental therapy. It was the thing I did because I didn't know what else would I do with myself. And through those benefits, I didn't realize what I was gaining at the time besides the vanity benefits, like, oh, I'm going to be fit and strong. But it was really something that really kept me grounded and focused. So I graduate college and I actually, like I said, I'd done some boxing training because kind of back to the first question you asked me, when I was in college, when I stopped competing and doing sports that were competitive, I realized I didn't have a purpose for going to the gym other than vanity purposes. So I actually sought out this boxing gym, which again, you got to remember, this is like 1999, 2000, when there were not places for you to go to do boxing. They didn't offer classes. The boutique fitness space did not exist. It was big box gyms, and that's really it. I mean, you might have had some one-offs here, but you don't have like what you have today. And I walked into this old, dirty, disgusting boxing gym where it is only pro fighters in there and guys that are like, they looked at me like I was dinner to them. Like, oh, this is the next dude we're gonna beat up on, and they did. But I had to learn. I think I was just crazy enough to come back. But I was happy to kind of like take the authentic training. But I had to take some of the rough parts with it. So back to realizing that if I could, I was like, whoa, man, this is a great workout. But I already know most people would not walk into this gym. This is scary for someone who feels confident in their own ability. I came from a combat sports background, and even I was like, oh, what's going to happen to me? Like, you got to be careful. And so fast forward a little bit, I'm in real estate, and I actually have a client that's that's looking to expand a little bit of a martial arts studio, and they were teaching some kickboxing classes as part of it. And so as I started to help them look for a space, I realized, I would love to come and help them do this. And so I ended up partnering with them, and we opened a location and where we did kickboxing and boxing because they're very similar. And then we started offering Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So we ended up building that up, and then I ended up, leaving that company and selling it, and actually got approached by one of my partners now, and he was like, "Hey, I'm working with these really high level athletes, mostly NFL players, and so training in the off season, and they all wanted to learn boxing in the off season because they're already big, strong, athletic guys." Teaching them to lift weights and run faster. That's what they've been doing that their whole life. So we started to teach them boxing as a kind of an alternative workout in their off seasons. And a couple of them were, Pro Bowlers. One of them was a Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP. I won't say his name, but they had a lot of fun learning from us. And so so the next year they brought a bunch of guys back with them because they were like, "Hey man, I heard you guys had some fun in your training." So we started to add the speed and agility and the strength training, which then that's what ultimately led me to opening up X3, because I was like, you know what, we can do the kickboxing, the martial arts, and the MMA, but we can also do the sports side, which also is fun if you're a weekend warrior. If you're a tennis player or a golfer, as you get older, if you forget that, part of being good at a sport is keeping your body healthy to do it. But all the way back to the original point was, but when we do this, we got to remember it's not that boxing gym I walked into. So we're going to make it where, my mother could walk in there. And even though she may or may not like that type of workout, she's not going to feel intimidated, because immediately she walks in, she's going to get greeted with a smile, and somebody is going to take her and literally walk her through everything and understand what brought her in, what is she looking for, how can we support that, and then make sure she feels comfortable taking the next step, which is try out a class with a coach and know that she's not going to get hurt. And we're going to be able to work at whatever level she's at, whether she's a day one person who's, gosh, I don't even know how to work out, whether it's a person who's trying to lose a lot of weight, or whether it's, I've had Olympic athletes and all the professional sports athletes and fighters throughout. So it's kind of cool when you get to work with those people all in the same confines, and you're right next to them and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing they're doing. Now they might be doing it more or faster or whatever, but you're on your journey where you're at. And so, as I said earlier, it's kind of like, pulling that athlete out of everybody, and, seeing how many people really start to, you see how they change. They had started identifying as like an athlete, a fighter, instead of, well, I'm an unfit person. So that's what kind of got me. It's sort of by accident, right? I didn't think, oh, I'm going to go do this and start opening gyms, but we opened our first one. And I realized that, back to my goal to be successful in business was, one gym is cool, but it probably wasn't going to lead me to my professional goals that I really wanted. And so that's where I started to look at, how do I grow a business? And I've had to, I've been fortunate enough to spend, the last really going on, because I started that first location. We opened in 2003. So it's been now 21 years since I've done this. And it's been a lot of ups and downs. I mean, there's been a lot of downs too, that it's like, man, there were moments where I don't know if this is going to work.
Yeah. Well, let me ask, I got a couple questions. So just from a KPI standpoint, I'm curious, and maybe you don't track this, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Sure.
do you know your conversion rate when someone takes a first class? How many from the first class actually sign up?
Yeah. So when we're doing that, we're playing a volume game to some degree.
Okay.
But it's a personalized volume game. So because we start with, lead flow. So how many people can we create interest with, which, submit a lead or get a referral from or something. And we get a pretty good, we've really worked hard to build a system that does that. Then our job is to then, follow through until we get them scheduled to do their first class.
Okay.
That's kind of the first step in our process. And then, or really the first part, and after you go from awareness and marketing,
Sure,
and lead gen, all the way to, well, what do I do now? Well, now you got to come in, and getting people to do that. And then once they're scheduled, then there's the actual show rate, and we kind of do a 50-50. So if we book 50 appointments, we expect a 50% show rate, or 100 appointments, 50% show, 50% close, day one close. And then there's usually about another 10 to 12% pushback of, okay, I'm not ready today, but maybe in a week or two, or you know what, another month goes by and they realize I'm nowhere further. And if I'd have gotten started, I would have already been, 30 days ahead of where I am now.
yeah. Wow, that's pretty good numbers. I wasn't expecting it to be that high. 50% show, which to me is really good, and then it sounds like 60+% convert if they come to class, and actually experience. That's really good.
Right.
That's pretty good numbers in terms of conversion.
Yeah, and I've learned over time. Obviously the people make the difference. My
Yeah.
more seasoned, experienced people create the most inviting and welcoming experience. Then my coaches and trainers that understand that this person is here for their reasons and purposes, not for you to tell them what to do, but make sure that what you are telling them to do aligns to what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that's always such a key nuance, right? Because we're always like wanting to deliver our product, and it's like, well, our product is really to be for them. It's what do they want out of this? And so even though, yes, they're here to take a boxing class or a kickboxing class, why are you taking this class? And the better we are at digging for that, the easier it is to go, okay, now I know how to make sure you can see this service and what we do as the vehicle that's going to get you where you want to go, as opposed to me trying to sell you a membership, because I can't sell you something you don't want. And the reality is if I don't know what you want, I can't help you see how this can help you get that.
Yeah. So in my research about you and your organization, one of my takeaways was your secret sauce is building your team, having a quality team. How have you done that? Like, what's your style? What are things you've done? Sounds like you probably had some school of hard knocks in this journey of getting to 6 locations. Share with us, what you figured out.
Yeah, well, the first thing is number one, you like any business, especially when you start to scale too, you have to have a process, just like sales, where you're constantly feeding the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think one of the things that I discovered as I went on was this: no matter what, even if you have an amazing company with amazing positions, it's not everybody's last stop.
Right.
And even though as a business owner, in my mind, I'm like, this is all I do. Where else would I go? So it's sometimes hard for me to remember that not everybody has that same feeling right now. And that's okay. They don't have to. But we really hire and train to our core values. And we say, look, even if this isn't your last stop, while you're here, we want this to be the best experience. And when you leave here, you go, man, when I worked at X3, it was pretty cool. I gained some really good knowledge, and so much so that it allowed me to go to do the next thing. And then as I grow, I'm like, well, I don't want too many of those good people leaving. So how do I create growth for them to grow internally and help our company grow? So yeah, the secret sauce is number one is constantly, continuously have a pipeline. So you're always looking and always screening and always saying, man, the best problem I have found is when I have good people and I have to find a spot for them. It's the other way. A lot of times we're very reactive and we're going, oh, this person just quit, or I had to let this person go. Now I need to turn on the recruiting arm, or I need to go find someone now. And it's like, man, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. And I'm not going to say we have it down perfectly, because we still run into challenges and changes and like anything, right? But as long as you go, okay, well then here's what we're going to do next. Let's turn it back on. Let's stay consistent. And just like anything, personal and fitness, right? The discipline of consistency usually outweighs doing the one perfect thing.
If you're a business owner feeling stuck in your business, overwhelmed, responsible for everything that happens, and working long hours, Tyler helps his clients develop processes, hire high-performing team members, and better understand their financial metrics and numbers to allow for a more predictable, less hands-on business. To schedule a free, no-pressure consultation, head to thinktyler.com and click the meeting button. Tyler would love to see if he can help you work on your business, not in your business. Schedule a consultation today at thinktyler.com. Think life, think success, think business.
Traveling to see your fave sports team is cool, but traveling with Amex Platinum for the big game is even better.
Right this way.
With access to dedicated card member entrances at select events, you can skip the line.
And one.
And with access to the Centurion Lounge,
He shoots a three.
you can catch the next game on the way home. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Card member entrance access not limited to Amex Platinum Card.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate is the world's biggest coffee lover because we love all the ways you enjoy. Wait. Coffee Mate can't love coffee more than me. I'm a foodie. I went to Kyoto just for a nitro matcha latte. What? Oh, I have to finish the ad. Coffee Mate, for the love of coffee.
The discipline of consistency usually outweighs doing the one perfect thing.
Yeah. I think that is something that tends to get glossed over is, or ignored, I guess I should say, is having a pipeline. A lot of times business owners wait until there's a need, and then it takes X amount of time to find
That's right.
that person, the right fit, and it causes the business to fall behind or maybe quality to suffer. So I love that mentality of just always be looking.
Yeah. And then again, that helps you lead to the next step of the process because it is more than that. Like, right, first it's finding people. And you have to sell them on the vision of what this organization is, and is there really growth for them? Because early on it was like, yeah, you're going to grow when we grow, and then I started to realize, well, there's only so much growth that we have where somebody can grow too, because we're not that big. We don't have the infrastructure yet. Now, as time goes on, can there be more opportunities? Yeah, of course, but not everyone's willing to wait or willing to level themselves up to be the ones to help us push those opportunities. But if you've got a strong pipeline, the next phase, which is something that I kind of did this part first, because I think most business owners probably will, is, well, I'm gonna make sure that everybody who comes in is gonna be trained, and I'm gonna coach them, and I'm gonna be hand holding them the whole process. And early on, I think it's easy to do that when you're small. And by no means, even if you train with me, does that mean you're going to get it all right? Because sometimes it's just like, hey, some people they truly want to grow and learn, and some people it's just the job they were looking for, and it helps them pay the bills, but they want to shut the lights off and go home at 5 o'clock. And I'm like, I shut the lights off when I can't find anything else to do. So, but I think if you do have that good pipeline, the next part is how consistent, how have you created a sort of a process that says, if I put someone through this training or onboarding program, what's the level I expect them to be and by when? So with us, we built out a 90-day onboarding program. 30 days is this, 60 days is this, and by 90 it's this. And even then, that's just saying, hey, if I can coach you through that, I think I've set you up for good success, to where going forward, your role, you should be able to continue to build and grow off of that. But what we also do is I try to really aggressively screen them out in 30 days. If I can't, I'd rather weed you out in the first month than in the third month, and certainly not 6 months later, because you've spent too much time and energy doing that. And so to me, those two pieces will do a lot for you that will pay off all the way down the line. And then there's all kinds of things you can do within each one of them, like how do we screen better candidates? And, I led my teams in talking about, first thing we got to do is recruit better, hire better, train better, and then continuously develop and build better. And if we can think about that from a people standpoint, I think we've got a great chance of long-term success, because, businesses sometimes will be like, well, our customers are the most important. And yes, I do agree, except for I think the people that I have, which is my staff who take care of the customers, are the most important. And so trying to figure out how to make sure that they're bought into the big picture goal, which sounds easy as an answer, much more hard to do on a daily tactical level, because everyone's got their own objectives. Everyone's got their own, reasons for being here. And so that takes the work right there, is keeping them aligned to the vision and understanding how they fit in to the organization and how they can make a real impact on the organization. So if the numbers are good, let's talk about it. And if the numbers are bad, let's talk about it. Like, who owns that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff. When you talk about like the first 30 days, you screen people out. Like, what does that mean exactly? Like, are you, you're looking at things a lot more closely? Or are you giving them more challenging things to do? What does it look like?
Yeah. So we every week has like weekly metrics, but what we're really looking for is, are you going to go in there and put in a full effort? Because the results are sort of like, as you're learning, the results may not come the way we want them to, but there are things that are quantifiable that we can measure and say, look, even if you don't get anywhere close to the result, but we can see the effort going in. And that could be as much as, like, for instance, like in a sales role, are you constantly making the calls and constantly trying to take feedback and trying to improve until you get it right? Because some people grasp it faster. Some people have already a depth of experience. Some have zero experience, but they have the personality. And I kind of aim for, how do I hire the personality and then train the skill? Because I think that is maybe that's the coach in me. I was like, oh, I could teach anybody anything, but they have to want to learn it. Right. So, and part of wanting to learn it is they have to want to learn it more than you want them to learn it. Because like as a fighter, I've trained fighters and I said, I can't want this for you more than you want it for yourself. So, just like if I was going to coach you and train you, I'm going to do these things with you. What are you doing in addition on your own? What are you doing outside of this? So when we come back to our next session, you're already ready to take the next level of guidance and coaching. So I think it's trying to really set a standard of what's expected. I don't want to equate it to like a boot camp or this or that, but I think it's like I don't want them to come in and we want it to be just like a guest. We want them to feel welcome and warm, but I don't want to spend 2 weeks just being fluffy and talking about how the future is going to be great for them. And then when you start doing the monotonous grind part, they go, oh, wait, where's all the fun stuff we talked about? And it's like, oh, that comes when you're really successful at this job. Like wrestling. It's fun when you win. It's not fun to go to practice every day because it's grueling. It's exhausting. So I think to your point, or to your question rather, making sure that 30 days is as realistic as what the rest of the days are going to look like. And maybe making sure that you're there to support it, because a lot of things happen and they get stuck or they get confused. And without a senior person, a leader, a new hire buddy, however you like we approach it, it's really easy to feel lost. And it could be as simple as, I don't even know how to log into this system we use, or I thought I was answering the phone correctly, or, when do we get paid? I thought somebody told me we got paid on this day, so just making sure all the little things are taken care of, but not something that is, kind of fluffing it and skirting away from the truth. Like, look, no, this, our core values is, we have a warrior spirit, hero-centric, and a champion mindset. Those are our 3 core values. And that champion mindset means, hey, you're not always going to win, but do you show up every day with the focus of how do I get better? And what did I do better than I did yesterday? And knowing that some of this is going to just be straight up hard work. And so I want them to experience that sooner than later, but not do it alone and not do it without support.
Very cool. So retention is probably something that I would imagine comes across your mind periodically. What do you guys do to encourage retention? I mean, just to give you an example, I recently went to this gym, and it's a little small gym. It doesn't have a national audience. And the concept of it is very novel, but I found after like 2 weeks, I was like bored to death. They followed the exact same programming for a whole month. And once I investigated it more, like every month, the 80% of the exercises are the same. And I'm sure it's very effective, but in terms of like being engaging, I found it to be really boring. So how do you work? And ultimately I stopped going. So from a retention standpoint, I dropped out. How do you work on that? How do you overcome that?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, because, I think there's, like every answer, right? There's a layer to it.
Sure.
And I think that's what we've seen, especially in the fitness industry. So when I started, like I said, there weren't these boutiques. I mean, there was not, the Orange Theories and the 9 rounds, and even CrossFit didn't exist. You had there just wasn't like this idea. Now is it's normal to us. But if you remember, less than 20 years ago, like, we didn't go to group classes. In fact, the only group classes were inside of the big box gym, and they were usually like an aerobics class or a Zumba class. And, and let's face it, if you were an athlete or even somebody who has never worked out, like those classes just weren't really fueling people to want to go do something, because it was like a side.
They were crappy.
Yeah.
They were crappy little classes, is the way I used to think of it.
Very, very true. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And many times it still is. It's an afterthought. It's
right.
Oh, people want more. Oh, let's try this thing, and then you bring in a coach or a trainer or somebody who's going to teach something, and there isn't really any structure to it, or they're building it as they go, which, hey, to their credit, they're doing the best they can. So is that, the industry has become very fragmented, but very specialized. So, like you said, some of it is great from a business perspective. F45s, Orange Theories, 9-round boxing, UFC got into the business. There's a lot of them out there, national franchises in the fitness space. I think that if I remember, one statistic I saw was like, I think fitness is the largest franchise industry and I maybe second, but I thought I heard it was the first, because it's most of the people that want to be in fitness are pretty passionate about what they do. And so these franchise ideas were like, man, we'll just give everyone the system and here you go. Just like giving somebody a workout and say, here you go. Well, if you just needed the answers, well, now you can Google it. Now you can look it up on YouTube. We realize it's a lot more complex than just knowing what to do or how to do it. It starts to become like the ongoing feedback. So when you start looking at it from an engagement standpoint or an entertainment standpoint, like fitness to me also has to be somewhat entertaining. Otherwise it's just a repetitive chore. Lifting weights, some people love to lift weights repetitively because the change for that might be, I'm adding more weight, or I'm changing up the exercise, or I'm doing that, but they're doing the same thing. That's fine. That works for some people. But for me, it's like, maybe I want to box, maybe I want to do jujitsu, maybe I want to lift some weights today. And I'm 48 or 47, I'll be 48. But I've realized I've gone through all the ebbs and flows. There's days I'm like, oh man, I don't want to do this. I'm not doing this stuff anymore. I don't want to lift weights. That's boring to me. I don't want to get on the cardio machines, and or I'll do something for a while, and then I'll be like, I'll start to kind of fade into something else, like time change. So I think what happens is two things. One, you see a lot of businesses have sprouted up around being boutique, but they only offer like one type of modality, and they've tried it, they've done a good job of systematizing it, which is great for scaling and growing a business. But if you start looking at what the consumer demands, they need a very personalized touch. And so I think you're seeing that in some of these franchises that have kind of grown like that. It's good for the franchisors. They're selling franchises, but a lot of the franchisees are struggling because there is at the end of the day, the franchisor's job is to sell franchises, and the franchisee's job is to actually deliver service. And there's a little bit of a disconnect there in some cases. I know there's been a lot of companies that are starting to have some troubles, and you're hearing about it nationally. And, I think that's where my mindset was. We set up to franchise, but then I was like, I would rather, hold on to quality and, make sure whatever we do, we're doing right. I would rather partner with someone, and maybe I just like to be hands-on. And maybe as a business person, that's not the smartest thing to do because it limits how much I can do. But so how do you deal with that? It's back to those relationships. And then with what we've always done, because under one roof, I have, 7 or 8 modalities. So you can box, you can kickbox, you can do jujitsu, you can do Muay Thai, you can do fast track, power track. And then we have yoga and fight and flow. And what I found is many people have gone out to do any one of those disciplines. But what's kind of unique, like kind of an anecdotal story, is I have more women training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with us because they started doing something else, but could see it closely without ever having to walk in. Every one of those women have told me I would never have walked into a Jiu-Jitsu academy and said, let me sign up. But because they were able to see it, and then as they're doing their class, maybe it was a kickboxing class or a fast track class, they were able to go, I see other women now going over there. And then when the coach who walks over and says, hey, Betty, I would love for you to come try jujitsu out with us. And they're like, huh, me? And some will say yes and some will say no. But I've had women who are now, and then they started competing. So I've got so many stories of that. But it's that inviting environment. But it also supports the fact that people need variety. And you can make variety within a workout, or you can create new types of training that may have some overlap, but at the end of the day, you go from weight training to HIIT training to maybe a boxing or kickboxing. But if you think about it, all fitness is roughly the same thing. It's just constantly reiterated in one way or the other. At a certain point, the body works the way the body works. Now it's about making the mind think about new things.
So you kind of answered one of my questions. I was going to ask you about franchising, and I guess I'll kind of veer into a different direction, similar,
Sure.
but different direction. So you've coming up on 6 locations. What do you feel is your capacity, or is there a capacity in terms of how many locations you can have? Because it sounds like, doing a little research on you geographically, they're all relatively close. What's your limit if you don't go the franchise route?
Yeah. So again, a lot of lessons learned. So, growing early, I realized, when I got to about 3 locations, I was kind of optimally able to manage 3 locations because I could be, at every one of them daily if I needed to. I like to be hands-on, so I would kind of move around, spend a day here, spend a day here, spend a day here. So my teams, I always had a good touch point with them. And that way I could make sure, if I started to empower managers and leaders, they weren't just like left on their own to figure it out. So what we realized is, for me, that became my sort of first capacity reach. So once we got to 4, I was like, whew, this is getting a little bit harder. You're spread thinner. And so for me, I realized once we got to 4 and 5, like if we didn't have another tier of infrastructure, it was going to be hard to grow the way we were growing. And to be real honest, to ensure the level of quality, so you're not just opening gyms and then trying to find bodies to fill it. That's also a process. So, not only we built the 90-day onboarding process, because even then, I think my best staff don't even hit their stride until they're about a year to a year and a half in. So, but that's a very costly and expensive investment if you're going to go that route. That's why the franchisors are like, well, we don't want to deal with any of that. We'll just let you deal with that. So I think that's where, realizing that, growth is going to take a little bit of a different look at it. And just like when I started X3, people were like, you can't do all those things under one roof. That it doesn't make sense. And, our mentality, and maybe this is the fighter in me, I was like, just because you can't do it doesn't mean we can't do it. And then it was like, well, you did it, but you can't scale it. And I'm like, well, just because you can't scale it doesn't mean I can't scale it. Not to say I can, but I'm working at it. And I think the reality of it is like so many other cliches, right? It only can't be done until it's done. And then I think if you look at examples around us, like let's, Chick-fil-A might be a good example to say, well, they sell chicken and they're in the fast food game, but everybody, if you ask them, what do you think about Chick-fil-A? And they're like, oh, I like, there's a reason they like it. What do they do differently? And so one of the things that I think I've taken away from watching other successful businesses in a competitive space is, they grow, but they're making sure that each of their locations has that owner mentality in it through, an operating partner. So I think that's the long-winded answer to say, I want to grow and help other fitness professionals also realize their dream. And instead of them either going off in a direction where maybe they have to start up from scratch, which is what I did. And because I really didn't have any other, I didn't have guides. There wasn't, I might have bought into a franchise had there been that availability at the time. But, in early 2000s, really, that wasn't a thing, or I wasn't smart enough to figure that out yet. But I think that's what I've realized once we've got here is when you can find a good person who is talented and passionate and driven, how do I pour into that? Because then it just becomes, I'm scaling people. The businesses are easy, buying stuff, opening spaces. That's pretty much a tactical thing. But getting the people that want to be there and then want to grow and be successful, back to our core values, is really the part that you have to be vigilant about. Like, hey, look, anybody can do it. Doesn't mean anybody will do it. And, that kind of leads me back to, I'm glad it's hard because that means not everyone can do it. I want to keep, or not everyone will do it, I should say, because that'll weed out the dabblers. That'll weed out the people who say, oh, maybe this is a good business idea. Maybe I should try it. Like, if you try it, no, you either have to be all in, or at least my opinion is you go all in, you find a way, as opposed to you got ways out. Like there was many times if I had other opportunities or other ways out, I might have taken them, because there were some dark and deep moments of what the hell did I get myself into? So I think it's about, not trying to grow too fast, but if you are going to grow fast, make sure you grow in a way that is sustainable. And so for me, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to own more clubs. I'd rather, and if I do, it's because I'm partnering with people that I can spend my time then pouring into, who are going to take that and run further with it than I could ever do, And then to me, that's me maximizing what my capabilities are.
Do you find it's easier now coming into number 6? Is it getting easier to open up locations and because you kind of have the plan down, or does it just keep introducing? Because it sounds like you're almost at a point where you're building a leadership team. That's probably a whole nother challenge. So does the challenges change, or does it get easier?
Yeah, no, they definitely change.
Yeah.
For me, it's easier because it's like, oh, I've been through this enough. I know what to do. I know what to expect. I know what's coming around the corner. And when some of these things happen, it's like, oh, okay, well, then just do this. But when you're building a team that maybe hasn't been through all of that, some of them, get a little bit nervous, or they can become overwhelmed. Or the hard part about people is not everyone handles things the same way. And so, getting back to the culture of the staff, making sure that, our job is to deliver the best experience for our members and our teammates. And so as long as, you can be patient with that, sometimes it's easy to forget how much you've done and how long it took you to get something right. I've had to remind managers and even myself, hey, when I started this, it took me a year before I felt like I was even close to, getting this level done. And so sometimes we fast forward that on the new person and expect them to catch up to us, in an unrealistic timeline. So it's not getting easier, but it's because we're taking on bigger challenges. So what we've gotten good at. But then now when we aim for bigger, it's like, ooh, now we got a different set of challenges or problems. And, I do some consulting for about 20, either small gym owners or independent franchisees or whatever, because they don't get that support. Just because I love doing it, I kind of fell into it by accident. But what I always try to remind them and remind myself is, in a business, you're always going to have problems. The goal is to trade the problems you have now for a better set of problems. I would rather have problems now that I'm dealing with that are going to help us move $1 million instead of me fighting and worrying about a $20 issue, and luckily we've been able to move in those directions. But, sometimes it's not always easy to see that. It's like, oh, one day when I get here, it's just going to be all smooth sailing. But just like fitness and health, right? It's routine maintenance. It's consistency. You don't ever stay somewhere and not have to constantly maintain it. So, you just have to build yourself up to know that, hey, there's always going to be problems. How good are you at dealing with them? And how good are you at making sure that they don't consume you or pull you into negative places where now you're responding out of fear and stress and frustration, which is easy to do. We've all gone through it, in every facet of life, not just, business, but, relationships and finance and everything else.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
We've all gone through it, in every facet of life. Not just, business, but, relationships and finance and everything else.
Yeah. That word consistency, that's such a powerful word. Not just in exercise, but in business. It's doing the little things consistently that add up, right?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Love it. Hey, this is a good wrap-up point. Your website is x3sports.com, x3sports.com. I'll put this in the show notes at thinktyler.com. Just absolutely, Mike, love how open you were in sharing things. And it sounds like your business keeps getting more exciting, and 6 locations, super exciting. And it sounds like you guys are doing really well, and it sounds like you have a fun program with a lot of variety.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the key right there. Like, hey, you got to do something every day. Try to make sure it's something you love, and find the love in it too, because there's a lot of things we could be doing. I get to do this, so I'm really excited. And I remind myself of that anytime I'm in a tough moment or I'm dealing with this tricky situation. Is, hey, I get to do this, so it's cool.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Mike, for being a guest. I hope I get to talk to you again in the future, and thank you again.
Awesome, Tyler. Thank you.
Sure.
That's all for this episode of Think Business with Tyler. But we have plenty more resources to help you in your pursuit of business excellence on our website at thinktyler.com. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode of the show, feel free to reach out to us on social media at think_Tyler. We look forward to helping you think life, think success, and think business.